Okay, so you may have an occasion where you need to test just a single fiber. This is how you do it with a CertiFiber Pro. First thing is, we'll take our remote unit, and if you look carefully, you might notice that when it's powered on, the LEDs are alternating between the multi-mode port and the single mode port. If we hold down this button here for 3 seconds, then the multi-mode port, the LED there, starts flashing red and green. That tells me now that this source is now active, this one is not. And this is outputting 850 and 1300 nanometers alternating between the two. If I press the button down briefly again, now it'll flip to the single mode port where it's now outputting 1310 and 1550. If I press again, it returns it to its normal smart remote status. If you don't hold this button down for the full 3 seconds, what happens is you turn on the visual fault locator. So make sure you hold it down for the full 3 seconds and then tap it once to get to single mode. As far as the tester setup is concerned, at the moment we're in smart remote mode here, which is not correct. Let's change that. I'm going to create a new test, and our test type we need to change to far end source. This is single mode, so I'm going to change my fiber type to single mode. And my test limit is, although it's multi-mode, it's TIA 568C. The problem with the TIA 568 test or an ISO test is that limit is calculated based on the length. Well, we're not going to be able to measure length because this is far end source mode, so we'll want to create a custom fixed loss limit, and I've done that in a previous video. So let's tap test limit, more, custom, and here's my trunk one that I created in a previous video, which has a fixed loss. We're LC, not that it affects the outcome, and of course we're using one jumper. Save, go and select my new setup, and we're ready to go. So first thing we need to do is set a reference. And the cool thing is we have this thing called a wizard. So if I tap run wizard, it's going to walk me through the whole process. I've already inspected and cleaned all my test reference cords, and this smart remote unit here has been left on for at least 5 minutes. You do need to do that. If you don't, you're going to end up with potentially negative loss readings and inconsistent readings. I'll tap next. Now it's telling me to connect to the input port. So here's my LC. This is SC, so it's what they call a hybrid cord. And I'm going to set a reference. I get 4 options here. Auto CertiFiber Pro is, as it suggests, the CertiFiber Pro units here, and the auto is because in that mode it can make the measurement at 1310 and then 1550 in one go on a single fiber. That's quite an interesting feature within this tester that was not there in the DTX cable analyzer. In the DTX cable analyzer you could do this, but you had to do one wavelength at a time. This one will cover both wavelengths. We also have another product called the CertiFiber Pro, and you can use that source if you didn't have this one here, but that's unlikely, but it's something we put in the tester just in case. And if you don't want to use any of our sources, you can use any generic source and then calibrate it, or sorry, not set a reference at 1310 or set it at 1550. But if it's not our source, this one or the CertiFiber Pro, you're not going to be able to measure at both wavelengths. Okay, so it's just set a reference. I'll tap next, and it's telling me to disconnect from the input port. Never ever disconnect from the output port. That's bad news. I'm going to put this in here for safekeeping. Next, and it's telling me to grab my other test cord, which is an LC to LC, and you'll notice that with the Fluke cords, they're red and they're black. The rule is that if it's red, it's hot. If it's black, it's cold. So the red here is going to the output port because that's the hot port. So on here, when we look at the screen here, we see the black is actually going to the input port because the input port is cold. Next, and it's telling me to join the two together. What we're going to do here is we're actually going to verify how good these cords are before we make any measurements. Now, this is not the most desirable situation here because typically I like to spread out and not have any coils or kinks in my single mode cable. Then we'll tap TRC verification. What are we doing here? Before we actually disconnect this and plug it into the link, we're verifying the performance of this LC connection here and this LC connection here. Ideally for single mode, we're looking for 0.25 as you see on the screen here. This is great news, I got 0.16 dB. These are reference grade connectors on here. If you don't purchase reference grade connectors and you just go for ordinary patch cords, you may not hit that 0.25 dB. It's going to be a bit of a gamble. So it's always good to go for the reference grade connectors. Remember, the better your connectors are here, the better they're going to be when you test the link. The other thing to notice on here is above the loss here, we see the TRC 2014-087. This is a cable ID. In other words, the moment we just did this and verified this test reference code, it's already saved it internally within the memory. So the cool thing about that is when you submit the test results, why not submit it along with how good your test reference codes are? And then if there's any questions over how good the TRCs are, you've actually got documented proof that they're okay. So with that said, we can go forward. Next, it's telling me to disconnect them and connect them into the link that I want to test. So I'm going to do that now. Here is my red. And into the other side of my link, home, and now if I test, bingo, 0.33 dB. That is the loss of this connection here, this one here, the loss of this connection here, and this loop of fiber. And if you really want to get picky about it, it's also the loss of this other TRC that you added in here. But this 2 meter represents a couple hundredths of a dB. It's totally insignificant. This is the correct way. Always do a one jumper reference when testing a permanent link patch panel to patch panel. And as always, we can save our test result to be downloaded to an instrument later. And that is how you do a fire in source measurement, a single fiber test, LC to LC, one jumper reference.